2, 1, roll the footage. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Strategy Show. I'm your host, Simon Severino. Our guest today, for 25 years, he has helped companies innovate around the globe. His sixth book just came out right now in March 2020. It's called Invisible Solutions. He has brought something special for us that he will unpack at the end of this, and we will deep dive into how to ask better questions, why breakthroughs are usually not in your industry, but they are found in other areas, and why you should only innovate where you also differentiate. Welcome, everybody, Steve Shapiro.
It is great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Steve, what are you currently creating?
Well, with the new book coming out, I'm creating a whole bunch of tools and processes built on the book. So the book is based on a tool that I've developed, and we're creating something, for example, a chat bot that you can ask it questions and it will help you solve your problems. And so I love playing with technology, and now's a great time to use technology.
So we'll have a chatbot while reading the book? That would be new.
It'll be interesting. So you're reading the book and you want to understand the process more, and it's like, okay, well, explain this process, and it will pop up with some videos that you can play that'll help you better understand the book and some of its concepts. But also what it'll help you do is choose the right path to solving your problem. So the book is based on 25 different lenses, and the chat bot will help you through some intelligence, help you choose which lenses will be best to help you solve your problems.
I love it. And before we go into your 3 CEO tips, we move to the segment which we call the Strategy Award. Okay, Steve, this is where you can pick one person who is doing things really different, but the right way, according to your perspective. Who would that person be?
You know, it's a tough question to answer because I think a lot of people are doing a lot of great things. I would say right now, I'm actually going to give a shout out to all of the people who have pivoted their businesses. It's not an individual, but it's actually groups of people who have actually pivoted to best take advantage of the virtual world right now. And what I mean by that is it's not about doing Zoom calls, which everybody's doing, but they've really rethought the process in a fundamental way. And there's just a lot of companies and organizations and speakers that have done a really brilliant job at that. And I think that to me is what's really exciting, is when people don't just, adopt a tool, they actually rethink and innovate around the tool as an enabler and then find the best ways to use it. So it's not an individual, but it really is a shout out to all the people out there who are really just having to pivot in a big way right now.
One example our audience could study, who would be such a speaker?
I would say that other than myself, where I've been spending a lot of time rethinking this whole thing, I'll give a shout out to Chris West, because Chris West, I've known Chris for a long time right now, and he's just done a brilliant job. He's always been in the video business, but what he's really done is he's now helped other people be able to take their virtual presentations to a whole new level. I'm working with Chris, and he's just absolutely brilliant. So I'd give a shout out to Chris West, because I think he's absolutely amazing. I'll also give a shout out to one other person who I think has really done some incredible work, is Chuck Gallagher, who runs a studio called Primo Productions. And what they've done, and one of the things which has been really great for me, is people have audiobooks and ebooks and print books, but not too many people have video books. And Chuck created my video book, which is basically me standing in front of a green screen, reading the entire book by reading a teleprompter. And then he creates cool graphics and videos and animations behind me that bring the whole thing to life. So I think those are just 2 great examples of people taking advantage of some digital tools to do some really cool things today.
This is powerful. Thank you. And now let's go to your first CEO tip. How can we ask better questions?
I think the key to asking better questions is to first recognize that the questions we ask tend to be based on our past experiences. And so we need to challenge our assumptions. Just because you knew your customers, just because you knew your industry, just because you knew your competition doesn't mean you know them. And so we need to go through a rigorous process of making sure we aren't asking questions that are past based, but are actually reality based. And to do that, I just encourage you to really look at what assumptions are you making? What do you believe to be true? What has always been true? What if that's not true? What has never been true? What if it is true right now? What do you believe to be true? What if the opposite is true? Just even asking some simple questions like that can help you reframe and rethink the way that you're doing your business.
What do you believe to be true right now? Nice. Second CEO tip that you have for us is that when people look for breakthroughs, they are usually not in their field of expertise. Can you unpack that?
Sure. So one of my beliefs, and it comes back to what I just said in terms of our past becomes our future. And so one of the things that we know is that past experiences limit our ability to see new futures. And therefore, expertise can sometimes be the enemy of breakthrough innovation. So one of the things that we know is that the best way to find breakthrough solutions is to actually recognize that the best solutions probably won't come from your area of expertise. So if I'm in marketing, maybe the best marketing tips aren't going to come from marketing people, but they might come from cultural anthropologists. Or if I'm a person working in healthcare, maybe the best solutions won't come from healthcare. A great example is a medical device that was developed that breaks up clots in the bloodstream. And that solution originally came from the oil pipeline industry, where they needed to break up sludge. And they took a technique, a filter that goes inside of oil pipelines, and they adapted it to work in the human body. So sometimes the most incredible breakthroughs can come from a completely different area.
This is so powerful because most of us entrepreneurs, we study our field. So sometimes we can just take some distance from it, do something completely different, and the inspiration will come there. While listening to you, I was thinking that I got so many inspirations from the world of sports and just, let's say, from when I'm not working. So when I'm not working, I'm playing with my kids and I'm doing sports with my friends and I'm watching some sports. So from there, I see coaches that are sports coaches instead of business coaches, but I see what they are doing and I get inspiration and say, hey, that's working. Why don't we do that? And so this is really powerful. Just change perspectives, allow for things to show up in a very different context and try to link that. I think also vertical farming was not invented neither by farmers nor by architects. It's really there. It's full of great examples there.
Yeah, I do. I just want to say I love sports. I think there's some great analogies that come from there. And one of the questions which I always ask is two words: who else? Who else has solved a similar problem, not the same problem? And sometimes that will unlock or unleash some new opportunities. One example that I like to tell is a toothpaste manufacturer that wanted to create a whitening toothpaste. And the question they were originally asking is, how do we create a whitening toothpaste that doesn't use abrasives or bleach? When they changed the question to who else makes whites whiter, they realized that inside their company, there is a laundry care division, and laundry detergent, the way they make whites appear whiter is through a blue dye. And so they created a toothpaste that has a blue dye that creates the illusion of whiteness instantly. So those types of breakthroughs can come from just asking those two words. Who else? Who else has solved a similar problem?
Who else? Wonderful question. What books did you find inspiring on a professional level?
Probably the book that I've always found to be most inspiring is Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman, which was by Richard Feynman, who's a Nobel Prize winning physicist. The guy is probably one of the most brilliant people in the history of science. Yet the book was fun, it was funny, but it was also just a great example of the power of trying new things and experimentation. He became a safe cracker at Los Alamos. He played bongos in Brazil. He would figure out a way to get rid of ants by experimenting with drawing chalk lines and recognize that the ants would walk along the chalk lines right out of his door. So it's just a brilliant book in terms of being able to see the world differently with fresh eyes.
And one book that you found particularly inspiring on a personal level?
I would say the book which for me was most inspiring was Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, which was really just about what motivates us as human beings, and maybe it's not the things that we typically think about, but rather it's just about finding meaning and purpose in our life, and we can create that meaning and create that purpose. And once we do that, then life becomes a lot more enjoyable and easier. And it was a fascinating study because he wrote the book while he was in the concentration camps during World War II, and got to see that the people who survived were the people who created meaning in their lives. And so very, very powerful book.
Your CEO tip number 3 is about where we should innovate and where we shouldn't.
Yes. So one of my favorite expressions for organizations is to innovate where you differentiate. And basically what I mean by that is when you are focused on improving your organization, not all opportunities are equal. And in fact, most of the time we tend to target the problems that are the leaky bucket, the leaky, the squeaky wheel. We go after the things which appear to be urgent, but they're not necessarily differentiating. What I mean by differentiating means this is the reason someone will do business with you and not someone else. So if it is something that is basically table stakes that everybody's offering, look, you have to get that right. But why would you put all of your energy trying to just compete on something where parity is good enough? So partnering with people for those areas of the business is great. And then when you can really figure out what's your special sauce, what helps you stand out? Why would people do business with you and not someone else? And then you put all of your energies there. One of the things you're going to find, and this is what I find with most organizations, is they spend about 80% of their time innovating around things that are core. That's the table stakes. That's what everybody else is doing. And only 20% on differentiating. And if we can start just increasing that percentage of time that we spend on differentiating capabilities to 40%, we've doubled our investment in the most powerful drivers of value for the organization. So it's just a simple model, but it's so powerful.
How do you do it? Do you have an example of clients working with you that have found that special edge and have doubled down on that?
Sure. So I love to use the insurance industry as an example. I'll just give you 2 different companies. If you look at State Farm and you look at USAA, so they're pretty much direct competitors. I mean, they both offer auto insurance and homeowners insurance and property and casualty, but they used completely different strategies. So State Farm, if you watch any of their TV commercials, it's like a good neighbor. State Farm is there. Jake from State Farm is the person in all of their advertisements. And their differentiator, the thing which distinguishes them from everyone else, is their distribution network. They have more branded State Farm agents than anyone else out there. And as a result, they own the markets. I mean, they've got like 10%, I think, of the property and casualty, and 18% of the auto industry, and some ridiculous number of homeowners. I think it's like 30% of the homeowners insurance premiums. So their distribution network, which is where they put a lot of their energy into, is a big differentiator for them. Whereas USAA, they focus on the military. So they only offer insurance and financial services to members of the military and their family. So for them, it's really, how do we serve those who serve the country? So customer service is important to them. And if you look at customer service ratings, USAA is number 1 or number 2 each and every year. And they really focus on how do we make the lives of our members better. And because of this, 98% of their members, their customers, renew each and every year, and 92% said they would never, ever leave. They will be with USAA for life. So those are 2 examples of powerful organizations using fundamentally different strategies to drive their differentiator.
Super strong. Tell us a little bit about your latest book, The Invisible Solutions. Why did you write it?
So I started actually writing Invisible Solutions about 10 years ago, even though it just came out. And what happened was my 5th book, Best Practices Are Stupid, was published in 2011. And in there, I talked about why it was important to ask better questions, and why the questions that we ask drive the solutions that we develop. And what happened was, as soon as people started to read that, they're like, okay, I understand why it's important. I understand what I need to do, but I don't know how to do it. Can you help me? And so what I started to catalog were what I called lenses. And lenses are really just like glasses. You put on different glasses and things look different. If you go to the eye doctor and you try different magnification, you'll be able to see things you couldn't see before. And so I've been collecting these lenses, and the whole point of this book is that if we change the lens that we use to see the world, we'll see something different. And so I just started cataloging these lenses, and I found the 25 most valuable lenses from my catalog, put them into the book, and it is a powerful tool that anybody can use to solve a problem by reframing the question. And that's really the key, is reframing the question, not about the solution, but rather about the problem.
I love it. And also that best practices are stupid. I've been saying this for decades, and my take was always, I don't care about best practices, because if they are best practices, somebody has already done it. I don't care. I want to move forward. What's your take? Why are they stupid?
Absolutely. That is certainly one of them. Look, and sometimes best practices are helpful. So for things that aren't differentiating, they might be useful. But here's what I think is most interesting. I think this is probably the main reason why I think they're stupid, is it's called the undersampling failure. And the undersampling of failure, the cousin to survivor bias, basically says, when we hear about best practices, when somebody says, I did this and it helped my business, what we don't know is all of the organizations that tried the same exact practice yet failed to produce those results. So we might have some kind of correlation, but not necessarily a causation between the best practices and the results. So I'm always very skeptical when someone says, hey, go do this. It's like context matters. Situations matter. So you can't just take a best practice and plug it into an organization and expect it to work in a different culture, a different industry, or a different context.
What keeps you currently awake at night in these funky times we are in?
Funky times. Yes, that's a great way to describe it. I would say the thing which keeps me awake, which I think is keeping a lot of people awake, is just uncertainty. Like, we don't know what's actually going to happen down the line. And if you think about typically how we would do strategic planning, for example, there was at least some level of confidence as to where things would go 6 months or 12 months from now. And we just don't even have that confidence right now. So it's really a matter of, I think right now, almost like a scenario-based planning strategy. Figure out what are all the different possible outcomes, and having things in place to be able to deal with whichever ones actually pan out without losing a lot of money in the process of trying to deal with the ones that never materialize. So for me, I'm constantly rethinking the way that I deliver my content. I'm even, for many, many years, I would call myself a speaker. And what I'm realizing is that's so limiting. First of all, nobody's speaking these days, at least on stages, but I'm in the intellectual property business. I have intellectual property processes and methods and tools that help transform the way organizations operate. And if I focus on that rather than the speech, that I think is very powerful. So I'm just using this as an opportunity to rethink everything that I do. I think it's exciting and it's nerve-wracking at the same time.
Yeah, because I wanted to ask you how you manage your own innovation right now that the stages are gone, right now that everything is really recalibrating and nobody knows exactly how the market will be. So what was the one thing that you had to change, and how did you approach it?
I was fortunate in some respects in that in 2019, I always choose themes for a year, business themes, and the themes were local and virtual. So my goal for 2020, because I moved to Florida, to Orlando, about 5 years ago, and I just love it here, and didn't want to be on planes as much, wanted to be home more often. So I was really trying to come up with strategies for doing a lot of work locally in Orlando or Florida, but also go virtually. So I put a lot of things in place. And so really it's been a matter of just speeding up the execution of things that I was already working on. So I mentioned earlier when I did the shout out to Chuck Gallagher about the video book. Well, I have hours and hours and hours of this book content. Now it's more valuable than ever because people are home and consuming digital content in new ways. And so that we've just sort of doubled down on things we were already investing in before this all happened.
And this is something completely new. So it's a video book. We see you, but and we hear the book, but we watch video. Tell us more. This is great.
So I mean, imagine you see me talking and I'm just reading the book like you would with an audiobook. So you see my face, but there's graphics going on behind me, or then there are times when my face disappears and there's animations, there's words, there's graphics, there's charts that bring the content to life. So one of my favorite stories is one where I talk about baggage claim, and where an airport found a solution to people complaining about the wait time, not by speeding up the bags, but by slowing down the passengers. And so that's one of the stories in the book. And so when I'm telling that story, you actually see people walking around airports, you see bags moving around conveyor belts. And so it just brings the whole concept to life. And I don't expect somebody to sit and just watch hours and hours and hours of video. But what we do is we break it up into logical chunks, send them off to clients so they can have conversations with their team around this content, sort of like a book club. But instead of everybody having to read the book on their own, they watch it together as a team, virtually, digitally, in a room, wherever. And then they have conversations around it and apply the concepts to the business. So that's the concept of a video book.
I love it. I go running and listen to audiobooks because I'm really bad in this last month. I'm really bad at reading books. So every month I publish my monthly goals on Instagram, etc. And people say, "Hey, you didn't reach your reading goals." And yeah, it's true. It's true. What can I do? And now people said, "Do audiobooks, Simon, while running." So I'm doing audiobooks. And there's really a whole spectrum in audiobooks. There are some audiobooks that are just, okay, it's like reading a book. But then there are some, it's like you are in the cinema. It's better than theater. It's a whole experience. It's like Wagner it's a whole art. So I guess we will see a lot of stuff changing there, and there is a lot of potential. What are the trends? What do you see in terms of innovation in that field?
Well, I would say that the main thing, what happens is we tend to have knee-jerk reactions. It's like a big pendulum swing. So everything was in person. Now nothing's in person. So everything is now a Zoom call. And as a short-term solution, that's fine. But I think what we're going to find and where the real innovation is going to take place is when people really rethink not the technology, but the process. What's the outcome we're looking to achieve, whether it's for an event or for a meeting or for the way a business operates? And what we're going to find is that there are a lot of tools out there that don't require us all to be on a call at the same time. So, for example, there's so many different ways we can use asynchronous content, whether it is something like a Slack channel for us to have conversations around a topic. It could be video. It could be something like Marco Polo, which is something which we use to have video chats where instead of having to have everybody in a room listen to a status report, you could just send in a little video. Hey, here's my status report for the day. This is what I'm working on. And then everybody can watch it at their leisure and comment on it and have conversations around it. So I think that's really the big innovation we're going to see is rethinking the way we do work so that work happens when the work needs to happen, and it will happen more efficiently than it's ever happened in the past. So I think this is going to be some of the most amazing innovation that's ever taken place in history is going to take place right now. Whether it's technological, process, or human-centered innovation, I think there's just so much exciting innovation taking place.
Oh, this is so powerful because asynchronicity is so much more natural, and now it's the time to do it, right? So we have this daily huddle where for 10 minutes the whole team comes together and says who's doing what. And since we had all different time zones, we started doing it asynchronously, and it's so much better. And there are some technological solutions, as you mentioned, that are making it even easier. And but also the real-time work, whenever a client needs something, they don't need to wait for us 3 weeks later to fly to their city and then to have an 8-hour workshop where we never work 8-hour net value, but a lot of that is just inefficient. So it's also a more of a real-time collaboration where they just tag their sprint coach quickly and they get a short work critique wherever they are, and it works on phone, it works everywhere. So it's really getting more and more natural and more with the flow of life, because it has never been natural to be 8 hours in a workshop. It's a much better day if you do a little bit of innovation work, a little bit of operations, a little bit of sports, a little bit of playing with your kids, etc. It's a much more natural flow. What's your experience?
Oh, I completely agree with you on that. I think that we're really just maximizing and respecting. I think the word respect is so important. We're respecting people's time. I mean, especially like right now. So I know some children have gone back to school, but a lot of them are still home and learning virtually. Well, it would be difficult for a parent to be a 9 to 5 type of person when their children are there. But if you can do things asynchronously, okay, so you could do it at 11 o'clock at night or 7 o'clock at night when the kid's asleep. And now it opens up a whole new range of opportunities. I also think that it's not always about the technology. It really is about the process. So one of the things which I focus very heavily on with my clients is I try to figure out what's the outcome we're looking to achieve and reverse engineer the best process. So one of the things which I know from my work, because I've heard from so many of my clients, is that actually people are getting more value from my virtual experiences than my in-person experiences because we can do much more. You're on your computer. So right now, every person who is on one of my sessions is able to go to one of my websites, download the tools, and we use the tools real time. It changes the game. And so I think it's just really exciting what we can do when we start looking at the process and the outcomes rather than the technology and trying to just automate what we've always done.
And I guess they can show you directly what they're talking about. Instead of talking about something, they can share the screen and say, look, this is my innovation map right now. These are my questions. This is what I need to solve. So I guess it's a much more direct approach.
Absolutely. And what we also do is we take advantage of what happens after the event. So most of the time when you think about speakers or workshops, it tends to have a start and a finish. We start the day, we end the day, whether it's 1 hour or 8 hours, it still has an ending. What I try to do is try to keep it going. So for example, with my clients, what we'll do is when they hire me to do a speech, well, I recognize the speech is only the start, not the end. So we create a custom password protected web page with tools and resources, videos and downloads. And we tell people during the speech how to get access to those materials. And then one of the things we typically do is we have some kind of experience that they need to do after the event that will help them apply the concepts that they learned during the session. And then sometimes we'll even do a second session where we can reflect back on what worked, what didn't work, and we'll apply them real time with some people. So I just think it really provides a much more engaging and dynamic environment with more people being able to participate from around the world rather than smaller groups. I can drive a massive level of engagement with 1,000 people, which would be much more difficult in person.
Speaking of which, you also created such a page for our audience. What did you put there together, and where can they find it?
So we're going to go live with it as soon as this is done. So it's actually not live yet, but it's going to be Steven Shapiro. That's Steven with a PH. So STEPHEN Shapiro, SHAPIRO.com/strategy show. And if you go there, the password will be strategy show. We're going to keep it very simple. And there's going to be the 25 lenses that I talked about earlier. There will be some templates. There'll be some videos. There'll be other materials. If you go there, that'll be live probably in about 15 minutes after the show goes live. But StevenShapiro.com/strategy show, password strategy show, all lowercase, one word.
Thank you so much for your effort. And I will go there directly in 20 minutes because I'm super pumped. And where can people who want to work with you find your work and find out if they are the right fit for you?
I mean, the easiest thing to do is just go to my website, which is stephenshapiro.com, again, with a PH, stephenshapiro.com. But I think that maybe the best way to get started is go to that page we created for this show, because that'll really help you just get a sense of the content that I have. It's on my website, so you can click wherever you want. So just go to that, stephenshapiro.com/strategy show, and that's the best place, I think, to get started.
Who should be my next guest?
Whoa, who should be your next guest? There are just so many amazing people. Well, I would probably say, if you haven't talked with Chuck Gallagher or Chris West, given that I gave them a shout out earlier, I just love the way that they're thinking about the digital world right now. Both of them have a different strategy. I actually work with both of them. And I think they're both brilliant. And I would say that they'd probably be great people to help people better understand how can they best apply the virtual world to their businesses.
Thank you so much. My last question. What did you recently change your mind about?
I would say the thing I've changed my mind about is really how I view myself and in terms of what I do for a living. And as I said earlier, I always thought of myself as a speaker. For the past 20 years, I left Accenture and I was speaking and speaking and speaking. And what I've realized now is, no, I'm a problem solver and an innovator who teaches people how to innovate and solve their own problems. And I think that's the biggest shift for me. And although it might sound minor, it's completely shifted the way I think about my business, because now I'm not looking for speeches. I'm really looking for ways of getting my intellectual property out there. So I've got licensing deals that we're getting ready to move forward with, certification programs and train the trainer programs, and a bunch of other different ways of taking the content, scaling it and leveraging it, including all the tools like the chatbot that I talked about. That little shift opened up a completely new range of opportunities for me.
And it's so much more scalable.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Congrats, Steve. Thank you for sharing your journey with us and your knowledge and your wisdom. And keep rolling.
Yeah, this was fun. I love this conversation, by the way. This was a really enjoyable, free flowing, and I just really enjoy this. So I so appreciate that we had